Hi, I'm Ed. Welcome to Common Sense.
And I'm John. How you doing, Ed?
I'm good, John. How about yourself?
Had a great weekend, and we're back on track.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, as most of you probably know, at least the ones that know us, both Ed and I have been part of the HubSpot partner agency community for quite a few years. So the topic we're going to talk about today is something we're intimately familiar with, and the question we're posing is whether it's better for companies to outsource digital marketing to an agency or to bring it in-house, possibly with help from consultants or freelancers. So we're both coming from this from different perspectives. You've been for quite a few years a consultant to mid-size and up industrial manufacturing companies, I believe, and you specialize in strategy and revenue growth planning, coaching, and that sort of thing. And I'm the recently retired co-owner of a HubSpot Diamond agency, Kuno Creative. And Kuno is still in business and develops both high-level strategic plans and executes them. So, different perspectives. And we're going to come at today's, topic not so much as a debate, but really as just sharing perspectives from our backgrounds. So what I'd like to do, I guess, is get started just talking a little bit about that. Give us a little more detail on your background and how you go about working with companies.
So, I came to this with the realization I had run businesses, I had owned businesses. I started and ran a company in India. I've been partners with a German company, always in the industrial space, but I was tired of dealing with personnel hassles. It's not something that I enjoy. Some people really like it, and I didn't. So I deliberately wanted a model where I'd work essentially by myself with clients. And so I built it that way. And I work with B2B companies, mostly industrial, often manufacturers. And these are companies, I've been on floors. I know the smell of cutting oil. I know what it feels like when that press, crumps and you feel it vibrating through the building. And the kinds of clients I work with are the ones that like making stuff. They build stuff. That's the way they look at the world. And traditionally, they haven't spent much time on marketing. Certainly not compared to typical software and service companies. So it's helping them understand how to go about it as well as how to do it. So in many cases, they've got at least some kind of a small internal staff that, it's not a big marketing department. They got some staff. They've often tried to do a little bit of digital. They kind of instinctively understand that's where things are going, and they've tried to do some of it, but they may wonder if they've really been successful, if they're getting optimal results. And I always start with strategy. Sometimes that means helping craft it. In some cases, it's not as refined as it ought to be. Other times, they've got a very strong strategy. We just need to use that as a base that we build on, and then build the frameworks for success around that. And then there's a lot of coaching and advisory that goes on as they execute. If I need other skills from people, web development or Facebook ads or stuff, I work with other people that are really specialized in those areas. And, that means that I don't have to have a staff that I don't want to manage. I don't want to have to worry about covering the payroll and finding projects that aren't fit just to pay them and stuff. So that's my approach. That's my perspective. And that's kind of why I started that way. But you came from a purpose-built inbound marketing agency. So, explain that piece of it to us and why Kuno's been so effective.
Sure. So I joined Kuno in 2003. Kuno Creative was founded by my partner, Chris Knipper, in 2000. And they started as a traditional branding and marketing agency, serving mostly, a variety of different industries, but mostly healthcare companies in the Cleveland, Ohio area. And I joined actually as a contract web developer after a long career in the oil and gas industry. So my specialty was IT, and I quit the oil industry and got into building websites back when it was just sort of getting started, especially in B2B. So Kuno over the years became more and more digital. We did a lot more websites than ever before. And that allowed us to really spread our wings into the rest of North America, other industries like manufacturing and technology. And we had a variety of different size companies, everything from a startup all the way through big enterprises in both North America and Europe, and Canada too as well. So it grew pretty well, pretty rapidly based on the, just the popularity of website building and people starting to go digital in the marketing industry. And about the mid 2000s, we started to branch out a little bit more into lead generation because that became more and more popular. It was something the companies wanted. And that's when we discovered HubSpot. So HubSpot was coming up with a new strategy for lead generation that they called inbound marketing. And that was really the combination of blogging, SEO, social media, email marketing, and so on, all sort of collected under one software platform for analysis. And we got really interested in this. We became one of the very first inbound marketing agencies, and one of the first to join the HubSpot partner program. And that really allowed us to scale up very rapidly because it was a new thing, a growing interest level among all kinds of companies. So we were able to leverage that into fairly rapid growth to about, I guess at the peak, we were about 50 employees. So we got to be a good size, small agency, let's put it that way. And then I think in recent years, the whole industry, the digital marketing industry, has moved in the direction of demand generation and paid media. So Kuno has made another pivot and a strong move in that direction as well. Then I retired last year to move on and teach the world what I've learned over the years. So that's how we got together. So yeah, that's kind of the perspective on my background.
And so obviously two very different approaches, but it makes sense. Every company has different philosophy and different management and different character and different culture, and they want different things. Not everybody wants the same services. So I guess then the question is there any sort of kind of maybe meta level change that we can identify and talk about that would explain trends in the industry as opposed to why one company might want to go one way or the other? And I think there are some. I saw recently Ad Age released a report showing that agency revenue and employment were falling while consultancy revenue and employment were rising. And you see a lot of articles about how the big consulting firms are adding digital marketing capability to their suite of services. And I think, it makes sense if we're going to talk about strategy a little bit later on, but the bottom line is the strategy is key and informs the activity. Consultants are often very good at coming up with that. And so that has to kind of precede some of the work. Many of the tools that are part of the digital marketing landscape used to really take very specialized experts. You came from being a data scientist and geologist and understanding big sets of data and analyzing those, and you were the kind of person that was an early web developer. It used to take a real expert. Same with even just running email or marketing automation. But now the tools are set up so even a guy like me can figure out how to do stuff on a website. So it's much easier for people to do it now. Content marketing as a process, it's really well documented. I mean, every person with a briefcase is an expert on content marketing these days. I mean, there's so much information out there. There's not a lot of mystery about it, but it means that it's getting really hard to excel at it and to succeed using it, and it's getting tougher and tougher and tougher. So, 5 years ago, an agency, just by virtue of cleaning up some, bad code in the background on a website and doing some consistent blog posts, could basically generate results. I mean, they were heroes. They kind of understood the mystery of it all. Today, it's a lot different. I mean, it really takes very substantial expertise. And so while I see that B2B companies love the idea of trying to hand off to somebody to do the work, they want to concentrate on their core competences, as everyone talks about. It'd be great to just have a marketing agency do everything for them. The reality is that most of the time they end up so involved in the content creation because it's technical stuff and what seem like insignificant differences to an outsider or a layperson are critically important to people in the industry. So these companies have to be really, really involved doing it. So they say, wait a minute, if I'm spending so much time doing it, helping these people that I'm paying that are supposed to get it done, then geez, maybe maybe we're better off just doing it ourselves. So that's kind of some of the high level changes that I see. What do you see from your perspective?
Well, I agree with you. I think that there is a trend towards alternatives to the traditional agency retainer model. Having an agency of record, especially among enterprise level companies, that's undergone a lot of rethinking because it's so expensive. Companies are spending so much money on digital advertising and not necessarily seeing the return on that investment. So they're rethinking it, how else can we do this? And on the other hand, I think it'd be worth just considering why people hire an agency, especially with the smaller companies. There's really two main reasons. One, they don't have the internal staff, as you mentioned. They might have a marketing director. They might have a couple of artists, graphic designers. They might have a web development person on the IT team. But they don't have the complete breadth of tools available and knowledge to do everything. So they reach out to an agency to fill the gaps, essentially the talent gap. The second reason is often that they have special projects that they want done, and they don't want to hire full-time staff as a design department, for example, to do brochures and that kind of thing. So they'll outsource one-off projects to either freelancers or consultants or agencies. And that particular one is one that we started out doing almost exclusively, was website design projects and other types of design projects. The problem with that approach that most agencies have recognized over the past few years is that it's unpredictable. There isn't any predictable revenue stream. And it's almost impossible to scale your organization based on that lack of knowledge of what's coming at you. And then if you're constantly chasing your tail to get work done on time and you're arguing with your client about hours, it's just not a very productive relationship. And it can lead to, I've seen it lead to breakups between companies and agencies. So that's one of the most common problems that you see between an agency and a company, is that they don't agree on expectations on how they should be working together. And, really it's in the interest of the agency to have a retainer, a nice predictable revenue stream, but it's in the interest of the company to minimize costs and really only use outsourced labor when they need it. So there's an inherent sort of struggle there that needs to be worked out. So with all that said, I think, there's still a good market for agencies. They just have to figure out exactly what's needed, and then we'll really work out a good relationship with their clients, delivering exactly what's being asked and not necessarily just being an on-demand, partner.
Right. So all that being said, that makes sense. And again, it fits. For some companies, that's a perfect sort of a fit. The piece that I see missing often, whether companies are trying to do it themselves in-house or whether they bring in an agency, is that the strategy piece is often too weak. And that's so critical and really underpinning an effective marketing program. It's got to be done right. So, there's kind of this perception, because content marketing is so widely discussed and there's so many ultimate guides and checklist infographics and all the other kind of stuff. All right, so all we got to do is follow these 17 steps. We're going to be successful. Well, it's not just about the activities. You got to be doing the activities in a certain way. And in order to do that, the context becomes really important, which is driven by strategy. And with content, the devil's in the details. And very small differences will make the difference between something that's quite mediocre or something that's quite excellent. So the business goals, the strategy have to drive it. And, many companies are actually selling different products, different kinds of product lines, different kinds of services to different kinds of buyers. They're not equally profitable based on what they're selling. So there ought to be, even before you start talking about marketing and selling something, there's got to be some basic business analysis of, geez, should we be? And what's the lifetime value of somebody we get in this product line? And what's the profitability? And how many repeat orders do you get? So rather than just say, okay, great, let's get started. Let's start writing blog posts and do social media and start marketing and selling more of this stuff. Do you even want to be selling more of it? That's kind of a very basic example of how the strategy piece is often missing. So also, I mean, disruption. We've talked a lot about disruption and some of the technology changes that are coming, and even the question of technology itself, how that's not changing business. What it's doing is enabling different buyer expectations and behaviors. And all of that stuff kind of has to get shaped into it before you even start executing anything. And I would argue, and agencies, I compete against agencies in this way, and sometimes I win and sometimes I don't, but I would argue that in order to be able to bring that kind of perspective, you have to have carried a P&L, you have to have sold, you have to have made procurement decisions, you have to have run businesses and dealt with the kinds of stuff, the kinds of issues, the kinds of buyers that your potential clients are dealing with. Otherwise, it's kind of an academic exercise. The fact that you buy Adobe software and Mac computers for your office doesn't mean that you understand how businesses, industrial companies buy their stuff. And that's a combination that's almost never found in agencies or in-house. And so I think that's what's driving the trend that Ad Age report. And that's why I believe, and obviously, I mean, I'm biased. I would say that completely upfront. I've got a model I believe it's best. But I believe that companies, particularly industrial manufacturing companies that like to make their own stuff, are better off doing an in-house program, but having a consultant to guide it. So, not many agencies are good at weaving it together. Obviously, Kuno has success doing it. And when they do, I mean, I'd love to hear more about how they do it, but also what's the downside to trying to work with an agency to bring all of it together in one piece?
Well, I actually really agree with you on all of that. I've seen it at Kuno and elsewhere that weak strategy or lack of experience at the account manager level, the person that's communicating one-on-one with the client, that's one of the main reasons why agencies get fired. It's just not good enough, and it's not consistent enough. It's not innovative enough. There's not enough new insights coming at each meeting. They're more, like you said, just delivering on a list of things they're supposed to do each month. The problem is that it's really hard for agencies or anyone else to find that top level talent to come in at the account manager level, get up to speed fairly quickly. And it usually, in my experience, takes at least 3 months to do that on what your services are and who your clients are. So there's a delay. So you're losing money on that proposition. Even if you can find good people, it takes a while to get them up to speed. So I think, and I've seen some of this done, is one of the smart things you can do as an agency is to partner up with a good consultant who fits your culture, understands your client's business, and is willing to work, along with your team as sort of a combined arms. That way you get the best of both worlds. You get the high level consulting, you get, very efficient execution of the plan. You get good talent across the board for all the different disciplines. So it can work really well if you do it that way. Another way you could do it, which is often difficult, but with the right kind of training, you could bring up your less experienced people up to a higher level at least. Maybe not the level of a 25-year consultant, but certainly better than they were before and able to meet the immediate needs of the customer. So those are two ways of doing it. But yeah, there are challenges for sure for everybody.
And no client wants to hear that they've got the rookie. And we're going to talk a little in a minute about some of the issues associated with managing workload and staffing and profitability and all. So, I mean, running an agency is really hard. I mean, in terms of running the operation, my model is much easier to run. and keeping up with the latest techniques in some of these very rapidly changing disciplines. I mean, it absolutely makes sense to go outside and find some of that kind of stuff. I mean, that's exactly what companies do. Even if they have in-house counsel, they draw on outside experts. The in-house counsel handles the slip and fall kind of stuff, and the outside experts are providing IP expertise and international expertise on GDPR that everyone's been hearing about all lately, that kind of thing. But this question of staffing an agency and running it profitably is one that kind of perplexes me watching it from the outside. My impression is that the retainer model is essentially a bet on the agency being able to be more efficient so that they can kind of keep a slightly bigger slice of that retainer while balancing that against the staffing levels. And the engine of agencies, not having been in one the way you have, but my outside observation is that it's really inexperienced talent that, kind of might instinctively understand how to market the products that they're consumers of, but certainly not going to understand complex B2B products. But that's where the financial arbitrage basically is built into the agency model. You can charge clients higher retainers and get a bulk of the work done by these very energetic, bright, but inexperienced people. So, I mean, I guess as I think about it, there's got to be a huge piece in how agencies manage themselves built around that question of business model and profitability.
No doubt. I mean, profitability is by far the most important issue to an agency owner, and it's the most difficult thing to accomplish because you're always backfilling talent as you grow sales. You add more clients, you got to hire more people to meet the demand. And if you do it the opposite way, if you hire out in front of demand, that's a quick way to kill your profitability. And if you happen to lose some clients to churn, then suddenly you're underwater. So the number one thing you have to do is make payroll every month. But the thing you want to do is drive more sales. So it's really kind of a difficult challenge for most owners. And then the other problem, as you mentioned, is that companies are becoming far less inclined to commit to these long-term retainers. I mean, that's the solution for an agency is to nail down these long-term retainers so you have that predictable revenue, you can plan out, scale up, all those things. But when those go away or you can't get any new ones, you're in big trouble and you got to think about scaling back instead of forward. So it's interesting. It's a big dilemma. It's been around for a long time, but I think things are starting to change a little bit. I'm seeing more agencies reinventing themselves and turning into more specialized services. So they'll focus on one product or one way of doing inbound marketing or one type of client. And so they're becoming more picky about who they work with potentially, but they're also really scaling back on the deliverables and becoming highly experts at one certain thing. So then clients have to think of them in a different way. And maybe they have to hire a consultant to kind of herd the cats of all these different specialized people.
It's, this kind of business trend, it always goes back and forth, but you're right. I mean, we're seeing amongst our kind of group of folks that we're regularly in touch with, there's one that's really focused on conversational marketing now, chatbots and that kind of stuff. One that really has doubled down his business on websites and how to really create websites that are optimized for conversion, not just that look good and some of those kinds of things. So that's a great point. But then it leaves the clients wondering, okay, well, are we managing it? Maybe an agency should manage it. So it's a hard question.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I mean, as it always does in our conversations, it comes down to what do the customers want? You got to figure that out. And it starts with a conversation about goals. That's no different.
Right.
Customer has to figure out, exactly. They have to figure it out too. They can't just think about hiring an outsourced agency to just do marketing anymore. That just doesn't work. It doesn't work for them. It doesn't work for agencies either. So there has to be a lot more creative and flexible way of thinking about, the inbound services or marketing services as a whole. What can be done? How can it be done? and who should be involved. And I really don't think it's an either or. I think, consultants, freelancers, agencies all have a place in this ecosystem.
That's probably a great point. And as we talk about what do customers want, the other aspect to that is that in some cases they may not be aware of what they should have. And that's not meant to be condescending toward them. They're experts in doing what they do. And it may be based on, experience from 10 years ago. They think what they need is a big AdWords budget and somebody to manage AdWords, when in fact, there's a number of other things that are probably more important for many, particularly the B2B complex sales kinds of companies, rather than that. So there is no right answer. I guess, we often end up reaching this sort of middle ground in our debates. And this was an interesting approach because it was more a conversation than a debate. But interesting to kind of understand those high level trends that I think are going to be important for people to watch. So I think
you brought up budget. So that seems like a good topic for next time. What's the right marketing budget for your company?
Yeah, and talk about no right answer.
Really.
Cool. Well, I'll look forward to that conversation. It sounds fun. In the meantime, thanks very much, everyone, for joining us today. I'm Ed.
And I'm John. Take care.